My name is Kayla Colbert. I work in talent acquisition at Siege Media. We are a SEO content PR focused marketing agency. Um, and we uh, our founder Ross specializes in SEO. SEO is kind of our bread and butter in terms of our services. And yeah, I'm happy to chat about the current state of SEO jobs and then the SEO market with Nick here today. I see you're a Vikings fan. Are you upset about the events of the last weekend?
You know what? Good question. There's a little bit of, you're always happy for somebody who is
Right.
tied to your team, but then, there's obviously a lot of what ifs. But thank you, Kayla. I know Ross well. He and I went to a Vikings game and 49ers game last year. But yeah, for anybody who doesn't know me, I'm Nick LeRoy. I manage SEOjobs.com. So Kayla's going to kind of bring from her perspective, what's it like to actually be tasked with hiring, kind of A through Z. I'm going to bring in just kind of a little bit of industry perspective and anecdotal thoughts from what I'm seeing just at scale through the site. So the goal is less contrarian views, but it'll be interesting to see from Kayla's perspective, how she's addressing certain things or what she's seeing. And then, I'll kind of bring it up with this is what we're thinking, this is what we see. So it'll be a really good conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm interested in your perspective, especially as a consultant on the not agency side.
Yeah, but I was gonna say, well, we could let's take that step back. I think it's important to just
Right.
talk about the state of SEO, the state of geo, AI, as I
Hmm.
like to call it, LMAO. I'm not gonna do a very like AI optimization for the sake of this.
Yeah.
Ayla, you wanna just kinda kick off, from somebody who is not in the trenches day to day in the actual SEO field, like, what are you seeing today for the SEO job market or sorry, just SEO as a whole
Mhm.
versus maybe the last couple years? Because if I recall, you've been at Siege for quite a few years, so you have
Right.
yesterday's perspective and today's perspective.
Yeah, yeah, I've been at Siege almost 5 years, and I would definitely say the last year in particular, has been the roughest on the market I've seen.
Mhm.
There are folks, I remember during the kind of the Great Resignation period where it was, like, impossible to find somebody. You'd interview somebody on a Wednesday, and then you'd reach out to them on a Thursday, and they already had another job. Whereas today, there are a lot of really talented people on the market who have been on the market and on the hunt for months. There are people, as great as I think Siege is, like, there are people that I think would have been a lot harder to get 2, 3 years ago who are still looking and,
Mhm.
we've been able to connect with. So it's a really tough market for job seekers. I was talking to my boss about this last month when I was planning my little spiel for this, and even in the last, like, couple of weeks, that has changed how I've thought about, the next few months is it's tough. I'm not gonna sugarcoat that. It's been a really rough year.
Yeah, and I'm gonna echo literally what you had said, not only as a consultant, but on SEO jobs as well. I was just telling someone the other day, Q1 of last year, I had like a crisis moment. I'm never a big fan of the whole like SEO is dead drama, but I wasn't getting the leads. Like I
Mhm.
lost one of my stable like clients because they decided, we just aren't going to put the resources towards implementing all the stuff that we needed to do. So I was kind of in a situation where it's like I was very fortunate to still have work, revenue was coming in. It wasn't a issue of paying it, but I've been very spoiled in the sense of people reaching out to me and what I was getting was either really low quality that like I just wouldn't be a good fit for, or it would be a good brand and I was getting excited, but similar to the job market, which we'll talk about, I found that other consultants and agencies were willing to just like drop to the rock bottom dollar. And
Yep.
the moment that you have to
Yeah.
compete on price, like I immediately lose because that's not where I'm going to. I always tell people like if cost is priority one, two, or three, like, probably I'm not gonna be the right fit. So, yeah, it was really slow Q1, picked up a little bit Q2, but for the
Yeah.
sake of this conversation, I'm just gonna say it was bad for the first half of the year. It really wasn't until the back part of Q and into Q4 did things pick up again. And I'd be curious your perspective because my theory was there's a lot of fear going on with SEO dying, AI being the future. And I think a lot of people were sitting on their budgets because they didn't want to commit to, a normal agency retainer of like 12 months, 24 months. But then we hit like Q3, Q4, and that's when everyone kind of looks back at their goals and they're like,
Right.
if I don't use this budget, I'm going to lose it.
Right.
And I saw not only in my personal consulting pipeline, but I probably got more job listings on SEOjobs.com in that last 4 months than I did all the previous months of the year.
Yeah. Yeah, I would we had a very similar year, I would say. Definitely, like you mentioned, the last, like, 4 or 5 months of the year, there was a pickup in sales leads for SEO. Our team was able to grow a little bit, which was I always love in talent. But I agree, I think the first half of the year, especially the first quarter, there was still these kind of rumblings about, like, well, what can AI do? Can AI replace your SEO? Do you need SEO if we're in the age of LLMs, but I think, as you mentioned, towards the end of the year, people realized that you can't necessarily place your entire marketing team and marketing budget with an LLM or an agent. There are aspects of SEO, SEO best practices that still apply to AEO, GEO, however you want to say it. A lot of that still applies. And
Absolutely.
so you still need that human expertise in order to execute those strategies and those campaigns. But I think a lot of the clients that we have as well started to realize that, and so we were able to pick up our SEO sales a little bit, which is great. But it's still a touch and go, especially in the last month.
Without a doubt. And I think you brought up another point that we hadn't quite touched on is not only was the market bad for people looking for work and, new jobs were slim to none, but it seemed like every single time I was jumping on LinkedIn, I'm sure yourself as well, it's like another person had been laid off. And to your point,
Right.
it's funny, it's 2026 now. I was I was seeing people in, like, 2023 that have, like, 2 years of SEO experience, like, have those basics. I'm sure I always call them the unicorn because people reach out to me and say, "Can you give me a 2 to 3-year experience person that will work for under 70 grand?"
Yes,
And I'm
yes,
like,
yes.
"No, like, you and everybody else," like but all that to be said, so now people are losing their jobs because as you had mentioned, there's a lot of companies and leaders that are very excited to adopt AI, and that is where they're gonna kinda deem, the risk. I
Right.
think, fast forward to now, I wouldn't say that it's better. Well, no, it is better. I wouldn't say it's necessarily back to where it was,
Mhm.
but what I was trying to say earlier, and I apologize for not speaking coherently here, is in 2023, I was seeing people with, like, 2 to 3 years experience getting, like, $120,000 a year.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like, it just was and again, I don't wanna sound like the old guy here, but it's like, I made $36,000 in my first job. I don't think
Right.
I hit 100 grand until, like, my last agency job before I went out on my own, and that was a lot of the reasons why I did side work and my own projects, but those same positions now, so I was always joking that people were paying C plus players or C plus employees A plus dollars,
Yeah.
and now I'd be really curious your perspective. I'm seeing the opposite now. I'm seeing the A plus players needing roles,
Oh.
but almost every job that I'm getting is 20% lower than where we would have expected it last year or the year before that.
Yeah, I mean, that is 100% true. There are people, we mostly hire at the mid-level, range, but there are often people in the last year, who I know could like lead the department, could be, you know, a VP somewhere, but they're applying here. You know, maybe I not to, you know, I think we're great. I think we're a great place to work, but I know they're applying for this job specifically because they know they can do it and they need a job.
Without a doubt.
And I'm totally empathetic to that. But it also does kind of, I do wonder long term for folks like that who are in that position where they have the skill set, they have the years of experience. They could be doing bigger and better kind of roles and functions within a job. Would you be happy? That's something that sometimes I have to be honest with candidates. Like, yes, like we love to promote people from within. We love to give people opportunities, but could you do this job for 2 years and be happy with
Well,
that?
no, they're happy they can pay their bills and put food on the table, but,
Totally.
that's not but like you said, when you're trying to build and support a culture and a broader
Right.
team, um, I actually kinda wanna take this in 2 directions, but one, I'm really curious, and it's a little bit personal for Siege, but were you guys put in a situation where you had to let anybody go because work was drying up?
Fortunately, not in our SEO department, which is great. Actually, our SEO department has been one of our best kind of our sales leaders the last couple of months. Like you mentioned, it's the last few months people have had a come to Jesus moment. Yeah, about about SEO. We did have to let go some folks in our content team
Sure.
a few weeks ago.
And the
I have,
reason that I bring that up is not
yeah,
to shine a spotlight on Siege. A lot of people are in spots where they have to
right,
really be critical because for anybody who doesn't know, agency side, like your people are your most expensive resource.
right,
And the whole point of me asking this again, this is not a Siege thing, love Ross to death. Like you guys do great stuff. But there is almost something to celebrate if you were able to maintain your team
my
as is.
God,
Because I call myself a recovering agency SEO because I did it for a dozen years before I went out on my
right,
own. And we know what it's like. You have to work and do a little bit more work and even a little bit more.
yep,
And you always feel like I'm never gonna get another head to help.
right,
And while I'm not sitting there supporting like, you know, hustle culture and working 80-hour weeks, this is one of those first times I think in our industry where I'm asking people that it's like, did they like lay off your team? Because if not, like that is valuable and that's something to consider because that means very likely Ross took home less to be able to maintain teams and to do things like I don't want to make sweeping statements for Siege, but
right,
the point is just that in a world where it became very normal to let go of your marketers, like nobody was getting the blowback because it's like Target let people go, then Walmart, then,
right.
IBM. And I was like, nobody's in the news because it'd be everybody.
That permission structure, once they do it, everybody can do it.
Exactly. So yeah, it's very interesting just to see that because we are in the first time in my entire career, and I've been in this place for over 15 years, CEO supply has finally gone larger than demand. And
Interesting.
we talked about, how kind of like C players were getting $8 before.
Yes,
I would
yes.
say that's because we still like that was the prime of like the the number of and I'd be curious from your perspective, you can
Mhm.
validate this in your experience, but the amount of people that were qualified to jump in and kind of just like start running, adding value almost immediately, like that drops your talent pool kind of in half. And then, like
Right,
you said, you chop off the top part because you're already leading a team, you're freelance, you're whatever you are. And those people just were gold. I mean, they could go work anywhere for 6 months. And
right.
here's the question that I have for you. Obviously, no names, no numbers, but you can't in California, I believe, ask for like what you're making currently. But did anybody volunteer a number where you were just like, wow, like you're making that? Like you're never gonna like we're just not gonna compete because like you said, we have a target market?
There's only been one time where somebody, and this wasn't a call that I was on, actually, it was someone else on our team interviewed this person, and I could tell by their application that, like, this person wants a lot of money, but they didn't specify that in the application, and that person did want, I think, something like 50% more than our range
Yeah.
for that role, so it was like you seem great, but we can't budget it. It's often the tricky part is when it's, like, just a little bit more, but they're, like, very firm in that a little bit more, and that's where it
A
kinda
little bit more when you make that exception for a little bit more people and then
Right,
more, it hits that
right,
bottom line. But that the reason that I had asked, hoping that you would kind of validate that is when people were getting what I'm calling those A plus salaries and you were still learning in their career, it's probably not kind for me to say C players, but we'll just say younger in their career,
right.
is now that we are in a world where everything, all budgets are being scrutinized, I
Yeah,
suspect there's a direct correlation with who did we kind of overpay because we need them in the
interesting.
moment. And it's kind of a last in, first out type thing. And I think that's how we lead to some good people are available.
Right.
Another conversation point that I'll let you decide how far I want to go, but I think there's a lack of talent in our industry right now.
That's a spicy one,
That's
okay.
gonna be my hot take. Caleb, if there's anything you should know about me is I'm not afraid to play with fire. And then I promise we'll go into some more structured
Okay, okay.
questions. But here's my take. And then you can not touch it. You can leave what you want. I will do
Ooh,
you.
okay.
As I had said, I firmly believe that the supply of SEOs is higher than it's ever been. And for definition, I'm just going to say anybody that has the acronym SEO in their job title.
Right.
I believe that a lot of companies have built intentionally like their SOPs, their best practices, their checkboxes. And these individuals are able to come in and work really well within a predefined system.
Mm,
But these are the people that are now reaching out to me looking for jobs, and they don't have anything that makes them stand out. And again, I'm not trying to pick on people. I have this conversation with individuals, but I ask, it's like, what makes you stand out? And if you're going to talk about your checkbox SEO, like none of that is going to stand out.
right.
And even to the point, I had one individual, she got really mad at me actually because her response was like, I have 16 years of SEO. And my response was, wow, you're going to cost a lot more than the person I can hire with 3 years. And I challenged her. I said, like, great. Like, what'd you do with the 16 years? And she couldn't get past, I've been doing it for 16 years. And it was
Uh,
just like, that can't be your selling point. Where like a couple years back, that might have gotten you that
I'm sure it
nice.
did.
And but so basically what I'm getting to, the hot take is while supply is at an all-time high, I think the quality, the high performing people within this industry is almost lower than it's ever been. And what I hear regularly from people on SEO jobs is it's not a lack of applicants that are qualified in the sense of experience matches title and description.
Right.
But when you start having the subject matter expertise conversations, they can't articulate themselves. They don't think critically. And again, this is not a personal attack. Like
Right.
I just want to throw that out there. But this is, you know, people that kind of have the SEO knowledge that I would attribute to someone with like maybe 1 or 2 years experience.
Mhm.
And they just, again, they fit really, really well into a system that was built to support
Right.
and replace. And that makes it really, really hard to transfer to the next agency or the next in-house. And that is what I think is the biggest issue that we're dealing with right now.
I fear I do have to agree with you about this. This is a problem that I've run into a lot talking to folks is they have all of these years of experience. They may have worked with agencies, they've worked with impressive in-house brands. Like they have the stuff on paper that looks good. But a lot of times, especially when they're in that second round interview where they're talking to our SEO team, they can't really explain the technical work in a way that we're looking for. I think, like you said, there are a lot of folks that will kind of lean on I have over a decade of experience, I have this and that. But a lot of times that experience is not like for our perspective, like we're looking for technical SEOs. I think a lot of people have this kind of content based, more on page kind of SEO
Yep.
experience that is not like I need you to be able to do an audit and like to be able to put, do schema markups and I need you to be able to be to be technically proficient.
So, Kayla, I'll
Um,
interrupt you for one second. I will that is a really good differentiator right there because I
yeah,
spoke holistically.
right.
But if we look at technical and content focused, I think they're
Very
before
different.
you even go into qualifications and value, it's a
Right.
80 split. 80% of people are content, and they will tell you how much they hate technical SEO because they don't wanna put that effort into learning it, and I don't say that degrading, I say that because as somebody that had to, like, self-teach, like,
Yeah.
I joined the world when there wasn't really that much training, which is good or bad, whichever way you wanna look at it, but the talent pool for technical focused roles is even smaller, but
Oh my
please go
gosh.
ahead. I love that you hit that, so I just wanted to acknowledge that and, like,
Yeah.
emphasize that these are not 2 equal talent pools. Somebody to come in and
No.
help, you know, develop content, strategy, tutorial is a completely different skill set than somebody who, like you said, they're gonna be able to whiteboard, JSON
Right.
LD, or we could talk about server logs, and again, if you can't even use those words in your interview,
Right.
you're gonna be in trouble.
Right. Like we have some like very basic technical questions in our interview process and it surprises me sometimes how people trip up over them because on paper it's like you're a technical SEO like advertised yourself this way and yet these very basic skill sets you're struggling with. So I think it kind of goes back to what you're saying about the kind of job title inflation over the last few years and people because of the way that they were built into specific systems within their workplace, they feel they have more experience than they actually do. And it's really hard to tell somebody that when you're interviewing them from it or not telling them that, but like explaining that at the end of an interview process that we're looking for somebody who has a skill set that you don't have, even though you've been doing this for a decade.
You brought up a really good point, and I think it's a really good pivot to kind of the next section, and this is, like you said, you have the right things on your resume to kind of bring you into the conversation,
Yes.
but can you share more? Because this is the part that I don't see because I get people to you, to everybody,
Yes.
and then you gotta kind of filter. But let's talk about or can you explain a little bit more about ATS, like what ATS optimization is? Like, how do we get past the robot so that you at least are saying, "I would never talk to Nick," but at least you put eyes on it and you made that decision versus this black box of AI told me you're not gonna be qualified.
This is any recruiter, any person in talent, anybody in the like remotely will tell you that their least favorite thing to talk about is the freaking ATS. The boogeyman under so many candidates' bed is the ATS. I'm going to tell you, most ATS systems are not that sophisticated, regardless of what their salespeople will try to tell you. A lot of them, there are very basic screening mechanisms that are being used. Most of the time, if you're being rejected, you are being rejected by a person, and I think that is the thing that like hurts people's feelings because when you're applying for a lot of jobs and you're not getting interviews or you're not getting where you want to, I think it feels good to say that like it's the machine that's out to get me, man. They're coming to get me most of the
Can you
time.
clarify real quick? When you
Yeah,
say rejected, obviously there's we've gone with other people,
right.
but what about ghosting? Like, so if you get nothing, is that indicative that the ATS rejected you? Or can you still look at that as you were not reached out to in general? So maybe that is a person too. Because I think to your point,
Mhm.
I think people really struggle to fill the gaps or maybe even get better in some areas when they don't think that they've even gotten the chance. Like you said,
It's
the bots are
true.
out to get them. So can you
That's true.
elaborate a little bit on that in your experience?
If you're being ghosted, I imagine it's much more of a volume issue. You're probably applying to a job that has a large volume of candidates, and they have either moved on to another candidate, they've moved through the pipeline before they got to you. They didn't, get to you before they filled the role. It probably has less to do. That's a tough one because it probably has less to do with you as a candidate. It says it's not really reflective of if you had a good or a bad application. It probably has more to do with volume and the role being filled prior to uh, your application being seen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that. I think I'd like to sit in this just like a little bit more. I know it's uncomfortable from like your perspective, but I think this is where I get the most feedback or looking for guidance, and I just
Hmm.
don't have the ability to. So again, I'm gonna pepper some questions,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna respect it if you're just like pass on that one. But okay, so let's just assume, I send in my sparkly resume, literally with sparkle dust because that's what you gotta do to get past the ATS.
Of course. Yes.
When you're looking at my resume, can you tell me, are there 2 or 3 things that are just like a huge turnoff? Like, do you like when people put an actual picture of themselves in the corner? I mean, I realize now, like, we're not doing like hand resumes, so it's not about it being pink or
Right.
green or blue. If they call themselves a ninja or misspellings or like, what are some of these things that really turn you off, like just at first glance?
First, these are specific to me, I guess, is a better. I really hate when I can tell that you took your resume and the job description and like either you used an LLM or some sort of mechanism to like plug the job description into your
Yeah.
resume. I have read the job description 100 times. I know what's in the job description. I want to know what you've done. I don't want to know. I don't want to read the job description again in your resume. That is a huge no because that kind of makes me question like are you confident in your own experience to be able to describe your own experience and talk about what you've done versus you are so you feel like you need to plug the job description in to get through the magical ATS. So that's a big one. That's a big kind of turn off. I think for me, I mainly care about your work experience. I think it's great if you went to a great college, you have a nice degree, if you've done courses that are interesting, the other skills. But if half of your resume is like your education or like skills and like things that are not your actual work experience, that's harder for me to it's harder to read.
Mhm.
Those resumes tend to be less easy to scan through. But also, I start to get a little bit more skeptical if you feel the need to pad your resume with things that are not work experience. How deep is your actual SEO knowledge from that perspective? So
Yeah.
those are the two things that immediately come to mind.
I like that one, and I think this touches on, like, another point, like, I feel so old school, but it's like, I was told that, like, if you submit more than, like, a one-page resume,
Yep.
like, you're not doing like, you're basically an auto fail. Like, but now we're in a world, like we said, there's some really, like, talented people with a lot of relevant experience. I mean, honestly, putting that into one page isn't possible, or what do you think? Like, how important is that? And if that's the case, for somebody who maybe has already worked for 10 years and say it's like 3 or 4 different
Right.
locations, like, how would you recommend, like, is it always the last spot you were working? Is it the last job that's most relevant? Just curious if you can give some more guidance on what you personally think is valuable.
Yeah, I think that depends. I think once you've been in any industry, been working for a longer period of time, you're going to have a longer resume. It's hard to fit all of that in. I would say try to conclude the most relevant information. If you are applying for an SEO role, but you have experience as a creative writing professor, I think that's really cool, but I don't need as much information about that. You can put that in there as like a thing you also do. That's great. But I think if you are applying for SEO roles specifically, but honestly any industry specifically, try to put your most relevant experience for front and center. I think, especially when we're talking about folks that have a lot of experience, the relevant experience is the most relevant for me to look at. So that would
But
be
what do you
my
think, just for, like, the thumbs up, thumbs down, if I submit a three-page resume to you, is there any preconceived notions, like, before you even read my name?
I used to because I also grew up on the resume needs to be one page. So it took me a while. Like for the first few times where I would read like multi-page resumes, like this doesn't need to be. You could have read. You shrunk this down. But I do think some people like I've read multiple page resumes that absolutely needed to be multiple page resumes. So I'm okay with it. I think again, like you working at the student store in college doesn't need to be a part of that multiple page resume, but if you are somebody who has a legitimate like 15 years in SEO, there might be 2 or 3 pages worth
Sure.
reading about that.
And like I said, relevant to the position.
Right.
So here's another question that I think a lot of people are in. We talked a lot about the years of experience,
Hmm.
and then there's kind of like really in the weeds. It's easy for people to come in and try to associate themselves with that previous job's like client base, and maybe
Yes.
they were executing somebody else's strategy. So if you see someone, let's just say they've been at 3 agencies. Let's
Hmm.
assume none of like this isn't like I have 3 months at each one, so no red
Right.
flags that way. Someone's at 3 agencies and you're hiring for a role that, maybe it's just a junior or analyst level. So you have that person. But now you have another person who has been out of school for a while,
Hmm.
no formal SEO job experience, but they can document that they have created their own passion website and, they have it up to 1 million visitors and that they've used SEO and it's all organic. How much of this like on paper success versus like, I know my shit and I can like literally pull this up on a computer?
Ooh. It would depend. I would.
I gave you the extremes. So
Those are the extremes. I think I guess I'll talk about like the potential red flags in both of these scenarios. For the self-taught person, I do wonder because agency life is very collaborative. You're working with other people. Like it's not, you're working on multiple clients at once. Like it's not like you're kind of on your own little island
Mhm.
all of the time. I do when I see folks that are very or like, kind of department of one situations, I do wonder if you're going to struggle, having to work in an environment where you are, working, you're part of a cog in the greater mechanism of agency life. So that would actually be the bigger red flag to me than being self-taught because I think sometimes self-taught people can genuinely be more talented and more knowledgeable than folks that have on paper years of experience in, fancy in-house places or in agencies. For the agency person, my concern, applying it like at a mid-level, junior level analyst role after let's say you've done like 2 or 3 years at 3 agencies, that's almost a decade of agency work. Why do you still want like and I think some people genuinely just like they don't want to be a manager. They don't want
Yep.
to they love the in the weeds work.
Independent contributor.
Right, exactly. But I would want to ask about that. Like so you've been doing agency work for 10 years. I'm assuming, you know some stuff. Like why do you still want to be more mid-level? That would be my question.
Is it fair to say, and again, I'm just going to assume that you don't have 50 awesome people that you want to talk to. Would you have a second conversation with both of them? Or are any of those red flags that you specifically said enough for you to kind of disqualify somebody before even reaching out and talking?
If the resumes are strong enough, if the application is strong enough, I would potentially be interested in talking to both of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good to know because I think there's a lot of people that struggle with what can I put on my resume? And
Yeah.
I'm very often championing the the side work. Like,
Yeah.
I'd be curious your
Yeah.
thought, but from my perspective, I would rather see that you've done 3 projects and all 3 of them failed, but this is what I learned from it, versus, again, I worked within the machine and collectively they won. One feels like you have grit and, like, you're pushing
True.
for it, and the other one is a little bit more, maybe we call it just, like, traditional, in how you're just kinda getting your experience.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that freelancing is the way to start if you don't have like, you didn't get that entry level position that kind of led to the next position and the next position. I think freelancing and like doing these side projects, if you know folks who, have some SEO work that you could do for them, that to me is more helpful than like your own passion projects because again, in agency life, you're not gonna be personally passionate about everything you work on, I imagine, but maybe. But I like if you have a friend who has a business or you worked freelance for another company and being able to show that work in that way, I think that stands out to me more so than like Like, I personally, like, sometimes I do, like, look through the little projects that people post, and they're very cool,
Mhm.
but I do think that, like, being able to work on something that's not just a passion project, but that's something that, is helping other people, I think that's an important thing from an agency perspective.
I feel like I'm even getting, like, a little bit of, like, a light bulb moment. Because again, even when I'm getting feedback and back in the
Mhm.
day when I was, like, applying for jobs, I relied on side projects and freelancer as my like, to distinguish, myself from somebody else. And to hear from you, it's like it sounds like those can be a bonus, but only if you craft that narrative appropriately. Like you
That's
said,
huge.
but this is
That's huge,
where,
yeah.
I think someone like me, like I'm dorky, I want to share the metrics and, my clients only care about money. It sounds like I could tell you that I made a gazillion dollars off of my own site, but if I don't make any mention to how I collaborated with like my freelance designer and my content writer, like, do you care about the hard metrics?
I mean, we look at both kind of the soft skill and the hard skill of it. You're not gonna, if the hard skills are not there, like, there are people that I've loved that I'm like, "We need to find something for this person here," but they just didn't have the hard skills to back it up, and we couldn't justify it. So I think there needs to be a marriage of both. I really liked how you said, like, crafting a narrative around it. I think that's like 90% of applying for jobs is like, what is your narrative? How are you going to convince me that you should work here? There are lots of people, as we've talked about, who look great on paper, and then you talk to them and you're like, oh my gosh, this is not going to work. And then there are a lot of people whose resumes I wasn't like blown away with, but they were good. And then I talk to them and I'm like, we should hire this person tomorrow. So I think resumes and applications are part of the narrative that you use to, I don't love the gaming of the system metaphor for ATSs, but like that is part of how you get to, the next stage. It's like SEO in general. It's how do you get people to click on your client's content and go to the bottom of the funnel and do all this stuff? How do you get me to click on your resume to move you to the next place and then get to a point where we want to hire you? It's the same process.
So, this is how you just hang out with SEOs way too much when you start talking about the funnels and conversions.
Oh, I talk about the funnels all day, Nick.
But Kayla, I've got one question and then I got
Yes.
another power question. This
Yes.
first one, this or that. And I
Okay.
want you to give an answer
All right.
and then you can qualify if you want. You have an individual, phenomenal SEO. Anything that you want them to do, they can do it. You have another person, exceptionally personable, can communicate really, really well, but doesn't know SEO. Which one do you pick if you had to pick between those two? And sorry, just to clarify, the
If
technical SEO
Yes,
does not
right.
have personal skills.
I mean, no personal skills is gonna be really rough because Job
Maybe it's just
Force.
understanding what how much is it okay to lack on one side if you are extreme on one end or the other?
I think it would prob we would not do this. This is not Siege Media approved. This
This
is
is Kayla.
hypothetical land. Yes. I think it would be easier to work around somebody who maybe you wouldn't put on a client call necessarily. If they can do the technical work and we can have somebody project manage who's already on the team, I think that would
Mhm.
be easier for us. Would we probably do that? No. We have been in both of those positions where we have the great technical who's lacking in communication skills, and then we have the personality hire who doesn't have the technical skills. And we have not hired anyone in either of those buckets. So, but if I had to pick, I will pick the technical with some communication struggles.
Yeah. That's interesting because my whole MO, and again, it's not a right or wrong. I think there's
Right.
ways to succeed. And I love that you had said like specific roles. An account manager who's client facing absolutely has to be able to communicate, but you
Totally.
got to deliver.
Yes.
But this take that I have had, and again, this is not to disvalidate it, is I feel like I can teach anybody everything that I have learned about SEO in the last 15 plus years in like a year or two if they are interested in it.
Mhm.
I cannot teach somebody to be personable. I cannot teach somebody to be likable.
Right.
And so my perspective is when people are reaching out and they go like, "What do I do?" And it's like, from me, it's like, yes, like you can't be in a situation where it's all or nothing on either side, like I
Right.
you. But in my book, when I was leading teams, I will take the less technical person who's a rock star communicator because I feel like I can fill that gap much faster than the other way around.
That is true. I think for us, it really depends on how much time we have, like, to train a person up. I
Mhm.
think that is really that's the biggest, like, make or break thing when it comes to somebody. We've had folks that, like, are just a little bit off technically, but we just don't have for that particular hire, we don't have the bandwidth to ramp them up to the place that we would need them. I think
And it's
that's
less
where.
flexible the more senior the role I would anticipate.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so this is the last like question. I'm going to try to stick two of them in there, and then we have just some Q&A from the audience.
Okay.
There are a lot of people, and I'm sure you hear it more than I do, but they're like, I have applied 100,032,000 applications and never get a response. Like, what do you recommend? I think it's probably I have assumptions of why they're not, but for these
Sure.
individuals that say, I've legitimately applied to 100 places and I'm not getting interviews,
Mhm.
like, what's your where can they focus? Like, how do they identify these issues that we've been talking about?
Ooh, I mean, I'm assuming that this person in this hypothetical is like getting only rejection emails or getting ghosted. Like they're not getting anywhere in the funnel or the pipeline. At that point, I think you need to start talking to folks. Like if you are applying for agencies, for example, if you know somebody in your network on LinkedIn and the SEO community, or someone you know who works in agencies, I would reach out to them. I would probably try to have some sort of rapport first, because if you're cold emailing people, cold messaging people, they may not always get back to you. But somebody you know and you trust who's like working in the industry you're trying to get a job in, and you're just like, hey, so and so, I've reached out and I've applied to a bunch of different agencies and I've just not been getting any bites, and I'm looking to maybe I'm a more junior SEO trying to get some agency experience to build my resume. Can you look at my resume real quick and then tell me what am I missing? Is there are things that I'm not, maybe I could be explaining better that could get me some feedback. I think that is the biggest thing. If you're getting nothing, you need to be talking to people in the industry who can maybe help you
Volume is
out.
not going to solve it.
Yeah, don't keep applying. Yes, keep applying. If you need a job, of course, keep applying. But
Try to
start
find some root issues.
yeah, kind of apply a little bit smarter. Because obviously if it's hundreds of applications, we're getting to a point where like something's just not working. So I would have somebody, vet that, somebody, maybe someone in talent, someone who's a more senior SEO in an agency, have them look at your resume and give you some pointers as to what you could be explaining better on your resume.
I like it. Okay, so like I said, I was going to cheat and kind of give the second question here. I'd love to know from your perspective. Again, assuming you're hiring for SEO, which is the whole point of getting something or someone to display in the search results,
Yes.
how important is a personal brand? And do you Google their name every single time to see what shows up?
To answer the second question first, yes, I Google everybody's name to see what shows up. Some people are a little bit tougher, people who have a common name that can be a little bit harder
Your
to.
Jennifer Lopez, your Michael Johnson.
Right, yeah. But I do, look up folks, just to make sure everything looks good. I try not to, like, get in people's, like, personal social media, that's not really
Sure.
any of my business, but, I do always check your LinkedIn for sure, to kind of see. That's another thing I do to kind of verify that your resume is accurate, because I find people are less likely to lie on their LinkedIn that everyone can see. So I do cross check the resume with your LinkedIn experience. So I do look at folks. I think personal brand, it's always going to be a plus. I don't think it's going to be the deal breaker where it's like, oh, well, I don't know. Actually, now I think about that. If I have two candidates who are both great and we can only afford one role, and one of them has a stronger personal brand, that might be a deal breaker. I say it's never going to hurt you to have a personal brand. It's always going to be a positive. It's always going to help you, especially if you're looking for a job. The
Mhm.
folks that I know who have gotten hired most quickly are people who have, not just a personal brand, but like a community that they're a part of. Whether it's LinkedIn SEOs or the SEO community or other Slack groups, other in-person groups. Being in community, being known in that way is always going to be a plus.
I think that makes a lot of sense, and I think that is one thing that I try to hone in when I'm giving advice because there are 2 ends of the spectrum. There is me who is way too involved in the industry and can't take on enough projects, and then there's people that truly have this, like, 9 to 5 barrier, and second it gets past it, I'm not doing it. Again, neither one is right or wrong. In between is probably what's right,
Right.
but I do suggest it's like I can imagine that it doesn't hurt them if they can get the, like, .com version of their name, and you can at
Right.
least push it up to, like, link to LinkedIn. It doesn't mean start a newsletter, don't jump and do
Right.
SEOjob.com, like but that's the I think a lot of people think it's speak on stage like Ross or 9 to 5, I have work-life balance. So,
I
here's
think, yeah, there's a happy medium.
yeah. So I'm gonna go into just like a couple questions that people in the audience have. Let's see. So, what does success look like in the first 90 days for an SEO role at Siege Media?
Ooh, that's a very direct question. I was not expecting that. I would say for most of our SEOs, they'll spend the first 90 days getting to know the clients that they're being assigned for that first probationary period. A lot of it is being able, eventually, being able to do the client work with less handholding. They'll be onboarded. They'll go through. We have a little the onboarding L&D period, so for them to get to know Siege, our values, the lay of the land, how to do work at Siege. But from there, it's being onboarded with clients, getting to know our clients and their needs, and being able to execute on deliverables, whether it's an audit, crawls, any ad hoc projects that come up both internally with our internal team, but also for clients as well. Being able to do that with minimal handholding by day 91.
That and just out of curiosity, like, is that pretty transparent on like day one, or is that kind of what you and management are thinking in the back of your head as you're observing?
What do you mean specifically? Like,
Sorry, like, some places, like,
yeah.
it'll literally be like, you onboard and it's like, "The expectation is at 30 days, you do this," almost like a rubric?
Hmm.
Or is it, we kinda let you just exist for 90 days, and at the end, we let you know if you check the boxes?
We do. It depends on the hire. Some folks, you can tell by week 1, like, they're hitting it out of the park, like, we're gonna be able to give them the keys to the castle,
Sure.
figuratively pretty soon. But some folks, like, we do communicate that if folks are struggling, like, we try to give them as many tools initially to succeed. We don't want people to feel like they don't know um, how to succeed at Siege. So if they do struggle initially, the first deliverable one maybe didn't hit the mark. We try to give them as many tools as possible and work with them. We don't immediately be like, oh, this isn't gonna work. It's over. We
I
want
love
we
that.
want people to succeed.
I used to always tell my bosses, it's like, "Don't surprise me." Like, when I get to the end of your review,
Yeah.
you're gonna have, your subjective thoughts on various things, but that is not the time to be like, "Remember 6
No.
months ago you said this?" Because 'Cause I've had that. I'm sure we all
Shoot.
have, but this isn't about Nick and his agency woes. JP has a good question that I think is very actionable for a lot of us. He says, "What is the single biggest skill that you find experienced SEOs are lacking in the current job market?"
Ooh,
So let's kind of assume it's a manager or above type role.
manager or above.
I know you kinda said it's a little bit more, maybe we can do senior analyst.
Sure.
Experience, somebody who should know better, and then these are misses.
I think it's often what we talked about a few minutes ago, the divide between the people whose technical skills maybe aren't 100%, but they're great people managers. They're great personalities, they're organized. And then there's folks who have like could do, could fix any problem on your website in their sleep, but
Mhm.
they struggle with communication and project management. I think often it's hard to find people who are that kind of unicorn both, or at least have strong enough skills in both. I've found, sometimes people will wow me with their technical skills, and I'm like, man, this person is great, but the personal communication is a little bit lacking. So I've found once you start to get higher, I actually find once you get higher up hiring, the deficiencies in one or the other are more obvious.
Right. No, that makes
So
perfect sense. I always told people it's like, I wanna interview the managers and the directors. I hated interviewing, like, interns. It's like, "So, what kind of beer did you enjoy during college?" Like,
right.
like
What do you want to do when you graduate? Yeah.
so the last question that I have, I think is really interesting. Granted, the market is kind of in a weird spot, but historically, trying to figure out your in or your transition to SEO made
Hmm.
sense. Let's say you have an individual that, she's an analytics rock star,
Hmm.
but she's like, I'm sick of looking at, analytics all day long. Like, how transferable is something like being analytics or development, kind of like what I would call like a quasi,
Right. Yeah.
like how would you look at that? And like, what should they consider like highlighting, to someone like you, where it's like they already know they're not an SEO, but they have, a lot of different thoughts.
So they like have no SEO experience. Like
Well,
how
let's
like
just
where
assume that yeah, just for the sake of this, I'll just kinda give you the softball. This is an analytics or web developer
hmm
who is fundamentally aware of, like, what SEO is and probably
hmm
can tell you your site probably shouldn't be in Flash still, but let's just say that they would not go very far if you just gave them the keys to the castle.
right.
Again, if you're a developer, very likely the technical transition is gonna be a lot easier.
Right.
Somebody with analytics probably is gonna skew a little bit more to be able to generate narratives and,
Sure.
have the data. So, again, I think a lot of it is like, I'm not trying to force feed the answer. It's just a lot more of anytime we can take experience that isn't rooted, you know, or heck, I don't wanna change it completely. Like, what if a PPC rock star comes in to you and it's just like, "I'm sick of paid. Like, I'm not doing that again."
It all could vary. That's the long answer, of course. But I honestly think those three fields, the specialties in particular, transfer to SEO pretty well. We've hired and worked with a lot of folks who have dev experience in particular. I think it's a lot of very similar work. So I think if anything, it's a positive. Like I look at that as a positive if you have those types of backgrounds because I think you're able to see SEO from an even more holistic perspective.
Mhm.
I I would hire somebody, and I'd be interested in talking to somebody who has that experience, maybe for a more not like the more senior levels, but maybe for like a more entry level SEO. I absolutely think like that is more impressive to me than somebody who, even from like content or something like that. Like those are skill sets that are harder to teach, I think.
That makes a lot of sense, and that's kind of like the direction that I was going in. I
Yeah.
always tell people too, for me, like, I feel like my BS radar is always on, like, level 99, like, I'm just waiting for somebody to kinda capture them in this, like, narrative that they're doing. Like, own that you don't know like, I always tell people,
Yeah.
take pride in, I know what I know, but I also
Right.
know what I don't know, and I'm
That's
willing to
important.
raise my hand and say, "Nope, don't know what a canonical tag is, but here's the process that, like, I would go through to identify that."
Yeah, I would like that answer.
You say you would or would
I
not?
would.
Oh, okay.
I'm
It's
like,
problem solving.
yeah, I can always tell when someone's like dancing around the answer when it's like, I would much rather you tell me you don't know and then like explain a little bit, like talk about how you would figure it out.
Exactly. Well, Kayla, we're at the top of the hour, but first and foremost, just want to thank you. Like, I know I peppered you with quite a bit of questions. I tried to add my perspective, but
Yeah,
it probably felt
no.
very one-sided. If there's any parting advice, one thing people can take away that you feel like will just make life a little bit easier for them, like what would
Yeah, I think the big thing for folks looking for work, looking for jobs is I think finding a sense of community in SEO is really important. I think that's the biggest way to make sure, you're you're never feeling alone in the search. I think when you've been unemployed for months, it can feel very isolating. I
Mhm.
think connecting with a wider community can help you both grow and learn more as an SEO, but also it feels less lonely, especially if you're unemployed, if you're freelancing, things like that. But even within in-house or agency roles. So the biggest piece of advice for people searching for jobs, people in SEO is to connect with folks either in your local community or online.
I love that. I'll just kinda wrap up here. I think that's a natural position for if anybody isn't a part of the SEO community, please join. It's just a great place to bounce those type of questions. And it's a little bit more of a safe atmosphere than say Twitter or a LinkedIn. As Kayla had said too, I think one thing that a lot of people have to do is you have to be open to feedback. Like the
Yes.
people that, in my opinion, the ones that I've talked to, if you are submitting 100 resumes legitimately and you're not getting any, like, take a step back, focus on why that might not be happening. And that could be leveraging people in the SEO community, whether it's local, online. And, as Kayla also mentioned, and I can attest to it as a freelancer that sits in this office all the time, it's good to be able to run things past somebody else that has similar experience. Or you know what? I'm a big fan of the venting channel. It's like, where's my safe spot to say, clients drive me nuts? Or you know what? Silly people. But that's all we have today. So again, thanks to Noah, Adrian for from the SEO community for giving us this platform. Are you hiring currently? And if so, what are you looking for?
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. We are hiring a senior SEO analyst at Siege Media. We're also looking to work with folks on a freelance basis. So if you have a full time job or you're not looking for full time work, we'd love to have you on a freelance basis as well. Yeah, you can go to siegemedia.com/careers, find us there. And if you'd love to apply and learn more, you can apply there. You can always reach out to me as well on LinkedIn if you want to know more about that.
Just remember 20-page minimum resumes. That's what
Jesus.
Kayla loves.
Yes. 20 pages
20 pages of
about,
excellence of your
yeah,
recipe. Grandma opened
about
up
your
the farm and
recipe, about college, about, your
your
nursing
dog
career
Fido.
before. Right. Yeah. I've
Uh,
I would love to.
so definitely reach out to Kayla. Like I said, I know the Siege team. I know Ross. They're really good people and they know what they're doing and they work with some really good clients. If for some reason Siege is not your jam, feel free to check out SEOjobs.com. There are opportunities and we are seeing more and more coming to market. So if you are in that situation where you're frustrated, I understand. I am optimistic that if you just take a couple of these items that Kayla had recommended, hopefully it'll put you in a better position to succeed. And if you're not, make sure you're part of the SEO community and make sure that you are asking questions. So thank you, everybody. Kayla, again, thank you so much for your time.
Yes. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Hopefully we'll get a round two in one of these days.
Yes. 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 All right.
Thank you, Kayla. Talk to you soon.
All right. Bye, Al.